شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصمه ومن كان
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Amma ba'd, viewers at home and our listeners all over the world, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You are again welcome back to another edition of your program, our program, anchored, powered by the Muslim Congress, with the theme Ramadan, the month of glad tidings and security. We have been talking about food security, and we shall inshallah continue with our discourse on food security. Records available data before us also indicates that more than 690 million people lack access to food security, and many more will still go hungry. This is according to the United Nations. And unfortunately, again, just last year, in one of the data of the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, an organ of the United Nations, classified Nigeria, along with some other African countries, such as Burkina Faso, Congo, Somalia, Sudan, as the worst hit, the hotspots of where hunger is domiciled. In other words, it's telling us, according to this data, that Nigeria is the headquarters of hunger, in spite of the various efforts both the federal government as well as the state governments are doing to tackle the mother of all social problems, which is poverty, and then to ensure that Nigerians have access to food security. In spite of all this, the records are very troublesome. They're also very startling. They also cause for a lot of concern. Government alone cannot tackle this social problem. It requires the synergy and the cooperation and support of all well-meaning corporate citizens as well as individuals who are endowed with the resources. The same data also went further to say that 9 out of 10 Nigerians cannot afford healthy diets. This is a very serious, startling, data, that out of 10 Nigerians, 9 of them cannot afford healthy diets. So which means, therefore, that the statement that says that Nigeria is equally classified as one of the hotspots of hunger in the world, really calls for concern. And we all know that the federal government and some of the state governments are working assiduously to change this narrative. What then are the causes of this challenge facing us as a nation? There are so many causes, but we just mentioned maybe some few of them, and then we want to look at how can we tackle these challenges. Number one, we all know that from history, we have always been having this problem of herders and farmers, violent clashes. In the past, it used to be clashes, but today, it has turned into a violent clashes or conflicts. The herders are those that are herding their cows, from the northern part to the southern part of the region. And along the route, they also trample upon the farms of the farmers, and their cows haven't devoid the, produce from the farm. They also, releases their wastes. In the past, the government of this nation used to have, what they call, cow routes. When the cows are living from the northern region to the southern region, they are cow routes. But today, those routes have been converted to either, government parastatals or government, companies, or even sold out to some individuals, such that those routes are no longer existing. And that is one of the causes of why the herders, when they are bringing their cow down, those routes were no longer visible. So they trample upon the farms of the farmers. And when this happens, the food baskets, the quantity is being reduced. And this also causes why a lot of Nigerians do not have access to food. Secondly, we also know of communal clashes, even from within the state, even from within the states, clashes among communities. Probably most importantly based on land, the issue of land ownership. One community may want to claim ownership of the land, while the other may also want to claim ownership of the land. And then we have skirmishes that now turn into a conflagration that consumed. Even non-indigenous in that community, they are equally not exempted. Don't forget, when we look at the Middle Belt, we have communal clashes within community to community. In the Southwest, we have not forgotten the Ife-Modakeke community clashes, primarily based on land ownership and rulership. This also affects the production of farm produce or crops production for internal consumption, thereby aggravating the already food insecurity that we have in this country. Another one that is also very important to mention here is the Boko Haram insurgency. As far back 2009, when they started with their dastardly acts, from that time till date, over 11 years ago now, the food that comes from that part of the region to the other part of the country have drastically reduced. And then government is contending with the challenge of how to reintegrate and then again to provide sense of livelihood and belonging to the internally displaced people in the Northeast, especially in Borno, in Adamawa, in Yobe. That equally has reduced, the production as well as the transportation and marketing of farm produce and fish from that part of the region to the country. That has equally affected access to food in the country. Another important, factor that can also, be mentioned here is the challenge of banditry. Just recently, we are contending with the challenge of banditry, most especially in the northwest region of this country. And farmers have been restricted from going to their farmlands. Before, we are contending with the problem and challenge of Boko Haram. Now, banditry has also set in. And along with that is also the issue of, cow rustling, where, people, capture and snatch, the cows of the local people, and then people are denied access to their farm. That again has reduced, our access to food and not making food to be enough to go around the nooks and crannies of this country. Another important factor that has equally affected our food security is the challenge of kidnapping, be it in the northern, be it in the southeast, or be it in the southwest of this region, or be it in the north central region of this country. Governments are seriously battling with the challenge of kidnapping. People are in their farms, doing their legitimate and lawful, profession, and then suddenly some people just jump upon them and they kidnap them, and they're asking for ransom. So this challenge equally has compounded the already challenge of people not having enough to go around. That has equally reduced, the amount of food in circulation, especially in a country where we depend so much on what we consume rather than what we produce for the consumption of our people and for the exporting to other countries. We thank the federal government of this country that has done so fantastically very well in the area of rice production. It has greatly improved on our GDP, and it has equally, saved Nigeria of billions of dollars that would have been expended on the issue of rice importation from countries who are now begging Nigeria to, look into this particular policy of internal production of rice. We commend the government, and we also want state government to borrow a leaf from the federal government in this area. And that is why, again, I must also say that the Lagos state government that has partnered with Kebbi state government in the area of rice production, they are equally borrowing a leaf from the federal government. If other states could also extend this kind of gesture, to their citizenry, we have, lesser problem when it comes to the issue of food security in this country. Another important factor is the issue of flooding and soil erosion, which has actually affected mostly the northern part of this country, as well as some states in the southeastern region of this country. And when that happens, the farmers are already cut off, from having access to their land, where they can also continue, their farming, and this has equally affected the food security in this country. I must also mention that the arrival of coronavirus COVID-19, which disrupted the supply chain of food importation into this country, equally compounded and then made even worse the situation on ground, so that so many farmers, especially in the rural regions, could not have access, to their farmland, and even in the urban setting, many people, especially the poor people, could not have access, and that is why the startling, data turned out that says 9 out of 10 people in Nigeria could not have access to healthy diets, and this has equally made the situation even more pathetic, especially where we have the largest population in the rural settings of this country. This has made our case so bad. Another important factor that I may also have to add here is the issue of forest devastation, desertification, as well as salinization, has equally compounded our challenge that we already have, which makes food not to be available. Most poor people today are not even bothering themselves on what is called a balanced diet. What they are concerned about is the challenge of existentialism, that is survival. How do we survive such that if a family should have access to cassava, and it is the same cassava they have access to in the night, it is okay by then. So going by the definition of food security, more than 70% of the Nigerian citizens do not fall into that categories, because they are contending with what they are able to lay their hands upon and not what they are expected, to have as a matter of choice. And of course, it is not at all times that our people have access to this. Not only that, another challenge that has equally compounded the situation is the fact that some of the economic policies that are being churned out equally make the case even not palatable. Because when we look at the current inflationary trend in the country, which has actually affected negatively prices of commodities, they have gone high. So it is a vicious circle. It is a situation where there is a domino effect, that one thing that will lead to another, and then it comes back again to the starting point. And that is exactly what we're having today. 1,000 naira about 3 years ago is not the same 1,000 naira today. And those people who are earning less, below $1, $1.2 per day, are majorly in the majority. And their purchasing power, no thanks to inflation, and no thanks to the fluctuation, situation in the foreign exchange of this country vis-a-vis other countries, it has made the situation to be more, compounded and worrisome to the less privileged people. These and many more are some of the causes of why food security to our people has become a mirage, has become a tall dream, in spite of the fact that both the federal government as well as some of the state government are working around the clock to ensure that they give meaning to the life of the less privileged people in the community. It is important for us, like I said, looking at the way Islam tackles this issue. It reminds me of one of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says, "Mathalul mu'minina fi tawadihim wa tara'umihim wa ta'atufihim kamathal al-jasadi idha ishtaqqa minhu 'ud'un تَدَعَى لَهُ سَائِرُ الْجَسَدِ بِالسَّهْرِ وَالْهُمَى, which means the similitude of the believers, of mankind, to one another in their words, in their love, in their mercy, and in their affection is like the similitude of a whole body, such that when one part of the body, organ of the body, is afflicted with an ailment, it will affect the whole entire body, just like as if somebody has, insomnia and fever. So our case in Nigeria today, whether we are Muslims or non-Muslims, we all feel the pang of hunger. And that is why Islam that legislated that we should fast one compulsory fast of 29 or 30 days in Ramadan is to make the wealthy people among us to empathize with the poor people who go hungry. People do not have access to 3 square meals. The rich man, when he wants to eat, it is lawful. It is not a sin. We are not saying that a rich man should not do that, but I just want to use this to illustrate. If he wants to eat, he will take what it's called appetizer. That appetizer can serve as a food for a poor man. After taking the appetizer, the rich man again will now eat the real dish. After eating the real dish, after some few minutes, he will now take what is called dessert. That dessert is again to aid digestion. But that is not the case with a poor man. A poor man just straight, one diet, straight. But Islam says their similitude. The Prophet used this particular hadith to give us a similitude. That if one organ is afflicted with an ailment, it will affect the entire organ. And that is the case why we fast in Ramadan, to have empathy for our people and to ensure that everybody has access to food security. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.